Hello all, welcome to the new Simply Put series by Kalam Academy. This is Priyanka Mahapatra, faculty at Kalam. So today we'll be having a discussion on the newspaper dated 2nd December 2023. So the articles which are displayed in the explained section of the Indian Express newspaper are very important from our UPSC perspective. So we'll be discussing them in series. Then the text and the context section of the Hindu newspaper was not available today because today is Saturday. So we have taken another article which appeared in the explained section of the Hindu newspaper in the digital version. Right? So the article is about the FAO report, which we would be talking further. Then second article we have taken about Sam Manekshaw, whose movies have hit the theaters this Friday. Then about the loss and damage fund, which got approved in COP28 summit concluded in Dubai recently. Then we would be talking about the GDP growth surprise. So the first article is about the FAO report, which is blaming the unsustainable business as usual practices for escalating the human and the environmental cost of production of food. So here it is basically talking about the hidden cost that is associated with the present food production system. Hidden cost as in that the cost we are paying in the form of ecological degradation, then we are paying in the form of nutritional insecurity, health related impact, right? That is coming with the present agri-food systems. So this hidden cost in terms of money, it is around $10 trillion. And middle income countries like India, they are facing the hidden cost in terms of 11% of the GDP, which is manifested in the form of higher poverty, environmental harm, nutritional insecurity, and the unhealthy dietary patterns. Coming to the impact of intensive agriculture, what we are following now is more of intensive agriculture in the form of green revolution. We all know the success of green revolution from 1960s 70s onwards. So green revolution has heavily favored the cultivation of rice and wheat, due to which the procurement policy heavily favors these two crops. And these two crops have become the export commodities also, due to which we are earning huge revenues. In 2019-20, the FCI procured around 357.95 lakh million tons of wheat and 443.99 lakh million tons of paddy. So area under the wheat and the rice have increased. The area under rice has increased by 20% and area under wheat has increased by 56%. Due to the huge production, the 65% of the households, that is near about 800 million people in India, are legally assured of right to food. We are able to give them the right to food because of the heavy production of these two staple crops. We are able to give them at much subsidized rates through the public distribution system and welfare programs like Integrated Child Development Services and Midday Meal Scheme under the National Food Security Act 2013, which guarantees the right to food. Then also we have seen that there is a huge production of sugarcane and areca nut. They are much water intensive. We know they are water guzzlers. But how they have flourished so well? Because we have brought policies under Green Revolution that is favoring investments in dams and canal irrigation, that is favoring the sugarcane crop, and also we are giving them free electricity for bowells, that is favoring crops like areca nut. But in the whole process of giving free electricity, free funds for investments in dams and canal irrigation, so definitely the intensive agriculture has brought with it a huge extent of ecological degradation. As we all know, Green Revolution has relied on the high yielding varieties of paddy and wheat, due to which the production of rice and wheat is humongous. It constitutes more than 70% of the India's agricultural production. But along with that, it brings many hidden costs. that we are able to realize today. We'll see how the seeds are purchased from the MNCs, how the local varieties of seeds, they are not prioritized, how we have to purchase the seeds only from the private parties, only from the MNCs, and thereby it has undermined the seed sovereignty of India. It has dismantled the indigenous knowledge systems. How the Green Revolution has shifted from diversified agricultural system, from crop diversification to monoculture plantations. How it has taken the pulses and millets to the back burner. How it has prioritized and encouraged the production of rice and wheat because of the huge profits it comes with. So when we are not producing pulses and millets enough, then here we are undermining the nutritional needs of households. Rice and wheat, they are rich in carbs, in the carbohydrates. But the pulses and the millets, they are rich in other nutrients as well, apart from carbs. They are rich in fibers, which the body needs. For example, the area under cultivation for coarse grains, that has dropped by 20% during the year 1966 to 67 to 2017 to 18. So you know now that how the millets and the pulses, the crop diversification, they were undermined, they were not prioritized, due to which the monoculture plantations, they brought ecological consequences in terms of reduced soil fertility, groundwater levels going lower day by day. For example, the expansion of sugarcane cultivation, it has affected the biodiversity in terms of its emissions, higher emissions. It has contributed to the air and water pollution. It has increased the pressure on the groundwater levels because of its water intensive nature. And lastly, the privatization of the whole process, it has increased the indebtedness among the agrarian households. Indebtedness to the extent that in 2013, the debt to asset ratio of a farmer household was 630% higher than it was what in 1992. So you have to remember these facts in order to quote these proper facts in the answers. Because in UPSC, agriculture is the favorite topic for UPSC, and every year questions come, may it be in essay or in GS papers. So these facts will be helpful in writing for answers related to the bad state of affairs of agriculture or about the Green Revolution. Any question can come because it's there in the syllabus. Then coming here, that the average monthly household income of a farmer sits at only 10,000 rupees. And the small and the marginal farmers in India are among the most food and nutrition insecure because they have a small land, and whatever land is there with them, they are more motivated to produce rice and wheat always. They will not go for crop diversification, they will not go for livestock culture. Okay, thereby they will be the one who will be nutritionally insecure. So what is the way ahead? How to revitalize the degraded land and the soil already being destroyed by the Green Revolution? So the answer is crop diversification. So here it is a best practice you must learn while writing your answer, that is Akkadi Salu in Karnataka, which involves intercropping. Intercropping means we are bringing a combination of crops and legumes, pulses, oil seeds, trees, shrubs and livestock also along with it. So what are the benefits? There is a cash provision from the commercial crops, plus there is food and fodder production in the field itself. You don't need to buy from outside because livestock is there with you. It offers ecosystem services like nitrogen fixation and pest traps. You need not go for high-fi chemical fertilizers, because it is there in the ecosystem which you have created in your field, because of the legumes cultivated, because of the pulses cultivated, because of the livestock. Thereby, it supports the local biodiversity of your crop field. It does not deplete by day because of the chemical fertilizers used in the green revolution otherwise. Then you can also promote the production of millets, which are more nutritious and they do not require heavy water facilities, irrigation facilities. They can easily grow in the semi-arid conditions without burdening the groundwater tables. They require minimal inputs in terms of fertilizers, water, soil quality. Thereby, it will provide a diversified food basket, and it will avoid the hidden costs, which the article is talking about again and again. So thereby, we can redirect the subsidies which we are already giving in the case of green revolution for production of wheat and rice. We can redirect the subsidies for preserving the natural capital by giving them for the production of millets, for the production of coarse grains, instead of incentivizing them, the farmers, to deplete the soil quality by giving them subsidies to raise wheat and rice as much as possible. Got it? So we need to help the farmers transition from the older system to the new system. Here it is a diversified farm which we can idealize. We can have a model where 70% commercial crops can be grown, 20% food and fodder crops can be grown, and 10% for the environmental services like oil seeds can be grown. They are called trap crops. Eventually, we can reduce these cultivation of commercial crops to 50% and raise the food and fodder crops and the environmental services. So it's a model diversified farm we are talking about. So here the transition needs to be very systematic. It will be highly unrealistic to expect the farmers to shift away from the monocultivation of rice and wheat overnight. We need to gradually move to the new system of crop diversification, allowing the farmers to adjust gradually. Dhire dhire we can adopt natural farming practices that will reduce the input costs. It can diversify income through value addition, incorporating livestock and poultry. And thus it requires the collaboration among the institutions, policymakers. Policymakers, whenever there will be a policy, then farmers will be encouraged to do. And also the social groups, those who can go and assist the farmers. So they all can come together to articulate the economic incentives for farmers to shift from high input monoculture to diversified cropping. Right? So these are the way ahead points you need to keep it in your mind while answering any question related to the hidden costs that is there with the agricultural system presently, or any question related to the crop diversification. So in the conclusion, you can say that though it seems that it is not rewarding to the farmers in the first instance, because the incomes will not be so high as compared to the rice and wheat cultivation, but in the process, it will be saving the farmers from the hidden cost, like it will be preserving the natural capital forever. It won't be depleting their soil. It would be ensuring the nutritional security of the household, right? And bringing less loss to the environmental biodiversity, right? So this was all about the first topic discussion. Then we come to the historical personality, Sam Manekshaw, whose movies have hit the theater this Friday. So who is he? Why is he so revered? He's the Field Marshal Sam, Hormuzji, Framji, Jamshedji, Manekshaw. Such a long name. He is one of the most storied figures in Indian military history. He is known for his military prowess. He was born in 1914 in Amritsar and he passes away in the year 2008 in Tamil Nadu. He was given the affectionate title of Sam Bahadur by the troops of 8 Gorkha Rifles, whom he held very close as the colonel of their regiment. However, very important, he did not serve even a single day with the Gorkhas. So this can become a part of your prelims question. You know now how the prelims questions are coming. A description is been given in the first part of the question. Then you have to guess the personality about which the description was there in the question. So same thing, same question can be framed over here. So you should be aware of these facts. Then he played a very important role in the first Pakistan war and Hyderabad crisis during the liberation of Bangladesh. So during the Pakistan surrender in 1971, he was the chief of the army staff. He led the Indian military to a decisive victory over Pakistan. So for his outstanding leadership during the 1971 war, he was promoted to the rank of Field Marshal. So he became the first and the only Field Marshal of the Indian Army. After years later, after his retirement, when he was asked about his decision in 1947, actually in 1947, Jinnah asked him to join to the Pakistan army in return of huge prospects in career. But Manekshaw chose to remain with the Indian army then. So when he was asked about his decision in 1947 to remain with Indian army, he responded that Jinnah had asked me to join the Pakistan army in 1947, and if I had, you would have had a defeated India. Look at the military prowess he was having with him in 1971. So what are the honors he was having? Apart from military cross, which he received from British Army after the World War II, many other honors he was also having like Padma Vibhushan, Padma Bhushan and Padma Shri. His famous quote during the 71 war was, "I wonder whether those of our political masters who have been put in charge of the defense of the country can distinguish between a mortar from a mortar, a gun from a howitzer, a guerrilla from a gorilla, although a great many resemble the latter." So it reflects his no-nonsense approach and dedication to the military, the patriotism he was having towards his country, India. Right? So these all quotations you can easily quote in your essay paper where the topic is about dedication, about any topic which is resembling the patriotism. Right? So this can be of help in your essay paper as well in this regard. So let's now come to the third topic of the day, that is loss and damage fund, which got approved in COP28 summit. So what do you understand by this fund? As the name suggests, it is basically a financial mechanism which is designed to provide some compensation for the losses and the damage incurred due to the impact of the climate change. So when we are talking of the impact of the climate change, it can be more, it can be less. So in that regard, there are two primary components associated with the impact of climate change. First is adaptation, second is loss and damage. So in adaptation, there is a possibility to reduce the vulnerability of the communities to the impact of the climate change. There can be made efforts to reduce the vulnerability, to reduce the impact of the climate change there. For example, by building resilient infrastructure, by developing early warning systems, by bringing climate smart agricultural practices that can withstand the changing climate conditions. But in loss and damage, nothing can be done even by the adaptation procedures. The impact of the climate change is such huge that it cannot be addressed by the adaptation processes. Basically, when there is significant harms and losses that are going beyond the capacity to adapt. For example, in cases of extreme weather events, in cases of sea level rise, when there are loss of livelihoods, right? So here we are talking about this loss and damage, which cannot be addressed by the adaptation procedures. It was first announced during COP27 summit, which I already talked, in Egypt, in Sharm el Sheikh conference last year. It is basically 475 million loss and damage fund, $475 million loss and damage fund, out of which so far more than $400 million have been pledged, where host UAE has pledged $100 million. European Union has promised $275 million. $17.5 million have been pledged by US, and similarly $10 million have been pledged by Japan. And some more contributions are on the way. So it's the compensation that the rich nations are paying to the poor nations. Why rich nations? Because of their huge industrial growth, which has resulted in global warming, which we are facing today. Because they're responsible for most of the emissions. And they're paying to the poor nations. Why poor nations? Because their carbon footprint is already low. They are less responsible for the emissions, but they are facing the brunt of rising sea levels, brunt of impacts of the harshest impact of the climate change due to the intense cyclones, droughts happening every year, right? So this is the fund which is given as a compensation by the rich nations to the poor nations. Then there is no agreed upon definition within the UNFCCC about the loss and the damage fund. Whatever is being done, it is based on the understanding. It has been categorized by either economic or non-economic categories. Economy means some monetary value is assigned to in terms of cost of rebuilding infrastructure damage due to a flood or loss of revenue from the agricultural crops destroyed due to a drought or intense cyclone. Then also non-economic criteria, as the name is saying, where we cannot or it is infeasible to attach a monetary value to it. For example, trauma. We cannot attach a monetary value to the mental trauma one experiences from a tropical cyclone, from a loss of community due to the displacement of people or the loss of biodiversity. Right? So then when we talk about the damage which has been caused by the industrialization, which I was talking about, that they are responsible for most of the emissions, that is US, UK and EU, they're responsible for 50% of the emissions. And if we include countries like Russia, Japan, Canada and Australia, then it jumps to 65% of the emissions. That is 2/3 of all the emissions. Whereas India is responsible for only 4% and China 30%. Right? So these are facts you need to remember in order to explain the stand of India on behalf of the developing countries, where it is not supposed to take the brunt of the climate change in terms of finances or non-economic sense as well. Again, this is a prelims fact that greenhouse gases, they comprise of methane, nitrous oxide, water vapor, carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide responsible for most of the global heating that is happening. So you need to know the order in which the global warming potential is, that you must be learning in your ecology classes. And what is the loss and the damage in terms of monetary value that the world is facing? It is 55 vulnerable countries. They are suffering around $525 billion and in the last 20 years. And the number is estimated to reach around $580 billion per year by 2030. So the extent of loss and damage the world is facing is huge. So we need to minimize it by showing some responsible behavior both by the citizens and the developing countries and the developed countries. So coming to the fund, the World Bank will be overseeing the loss and damage fund in the beginning, with the source of funds being rich nations such as US, UK, EU, as well as some developing countries as well. So here we need to understand that previously the developing nations were not ready to see World Bank being the oversight body for the loss and the damage fund, because they were seeing World Bank as a means by which the richer nations could have more control over the finances. But this time they have accepted this term now, that the World Bank will be overseeing the fund. Right? So this was all about this topic's discussion. Let's now come to the last topic of the day, that is GDP growth surprise, which we got from the recent report. In the second quarter of the fiscal, we have got higher than anticipated GDP growth of 7.6%, which has surpassed the official growth projection of 6.5% for the year 2023 to 2024. So there has been a strong expansion in the manufacturing and construction sector, which has grown by 14% and 13.3% respectively. Whereas the agriculture and the services sector, they have seen a decline. Right? So because of the less rural demand and because of the lower private consumption. So concerns are remaining about the lower private consumption and especially the rural demand. Overall, India's GDP has witnessed a growth of 7.6% with compared to 6.2% in last year during this period, July-September 2022. And therefore, coming to the GVA, higher GVA in manufacturing, so construction and mining, it may lead to higher employment opportunities, especially in the low skill variety jobs. And seeing to the growth levels, however, it may be too early to claim that India's manufacturing sector has completed a revival. Okay, there are more to see. And due to the higher GDP growth, it has retained its tag of being the fastest growing major economy in the world. And coming to the ways of calculating GDP, there are two ways. When the expenditure side of the economy is taken into account, the GDP is calculated on the basis of how people spend their money. And recently we have shifted to the gross value added method of calculating GDP, where the income side of the economy is taken into account. So this was all about the today's discussion. Thank you.